Hello there and a very warm welcome to another edition of Channels Beam. I'm Victor Matthias. Now, the launch of the national policy on blockchain was greeted with so much expectations as the federal government says it is taking all steps possible to bolster the tech space as the administration is winding down. Now, the policy is anticipated to offer a framework for the application of blockchain technology in a variety of industries, including finance, agriculture, health and education, amongst others. Another significant step is the formation of a National Security Council to supervise the policy's application. Today on the program, we'll take a look at the pros as well as the cons of the document and also take a look at the mode in which it will be implemented. But let's first take a look at the trending topics in the past week before we dig into all of this.
Nigerian chef Hilda Bassi made a historic feat on Monday when she surpassed the Guinness World Record for longest cooking time by an individual. Her quest to make history generated so much buzz among Nigerians who are still rallying support for her both on social media and at the venue of a cookathon in Amore Gardens in Lekki, Lagos State. Many dignitaries, including the President-elect Bola Tinubu, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, presidential candidate of the Labour Party Peter Obi, Governors Babajide Sanwo-Olu of Lagos and Dapo Abiodun of Ogun, and a host of celebrities have shown support for Bassi's quest and lauded her resilience and grit. Afrobeat star Seun Kuti was also in the trends list after a video of him emerged on social media where he was seen assaulting a police officer. But in a cryptic Instagram story on his profile, he claims that the said officer made an attempt on his life and that of his family. While he claims to have proof of that, he noted that the person has apologized and he won't press charges against him. The Inspector General of Police, Usman Alkalibaba, has since ordered the Commissioner of Police Lagos State Command to arrest the Afrobeat singer. The Afrobeat singer has since turned himself in and has been taken into custody by the police.
Well, there you go. Mixed trends in the past week for Nigerians. But before we begin the conversation, let's take a look or take a listen at the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Mr. Professor, I beg your pardon, Isa Ali Pantami, when he made the announcement of the launch of the national policy.
In order to consolidate the implementation of the emerging technology pillar, the federal government of Nigeria today approved the national blockchain policy for Nigeria. This policy was developed through consultation with the stakeholders, where 56 institutions and personalities were involved in the process of conceptualizing, developing, and reviewing the policy. With the approval of the national policy, national blockchain policy for Nigeria today, we can safely say that blockchain technology with all its components and types have been institutionalized in the country. And part of the approval of the Federal Executive Council is directing regulatory bodies to liaise with the National Information Technology Development Agency to ensure that they come up with regulatory instruments in all sectors of our economy and security. Blockchain technology is relevant to so many sectors in banking, in security, in education, in commerce, among many others. So regulatory bodies like the Central Bank of Nigeria, Nigerian Communications Commissions, Security and Exchange Commission, National Universities Commission have been directed with the approval to come up with the regulatory instruments within their sector for the implementation of the national blockchain policy for Nigeria.
Well, there you go, the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy. But joining us to look at today's topic, we have with us via Zoom from Lagos, Omori Edogiawere. He is a startup attorney and a notary public of Nigeria with extensive experience in corporate and commercial legal practice and startup law. Again, he joins us via Zoom from Lagos. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, Victor.
Of course, you're welcome. We also have joining us Timi Olagunju. He's a tech lawyer and a policy consultant. He also joins us via Zoom from Lagos. Timi, it's a pleasure to have you as well on the show.
Thank you for having me, Victor.
Absolutely. Kicks out the conversation for us. Timi, you know, how would I put it now? You know, what struck you the moment, you know, you heard the announcement, you know, by the minister about the announcement about the launch, rather, of this policy?
Well, what struck me was the fact that there was an effort towards ensuring that we consciously document or bring to fore the importance of blockchain to the development of the Nigerian ecosystem, as it were, across boards. And more importantly is the fact that that's a step in the right direction. However, there are a few things that in the course of the conversations that we might want to look at in terms of the practicality of that policy, whether it speaks to empowering in terms of the instruments that are needed to actually bring the policy to fore, or rather it is just an ordinary document that might not have the weight and power that it needs. But more instructive also is the fact that NIDA is pushing this. I would have preferred that it was the presidency, but it's a good step also that NIDA is actually pushing it. There seems to be a lot on NIDA's table. You know, remember there's a Startup Act, which NIDA is actually the administrative head, right? And now you now have the blockchain policy, which is now domiciled in terms of leadership at the NIDA's table. That's a lot on NIDA's plate at the moment. That itself struck me largely.
All right, very well. Let me quickly bring Omori into the conversation. Omori, looking at the fact that, you know, crypto, or, you know, cryptocurrency, as we all call it, you know, it's pretty much one of the most used blockchain technology, you know, components. You know, how does this, and we know what the stance of the CBN is, you know, especially with regards to crypto, you know, where does this put us?
Well, starting point, the policy is a welcome development. If adequately deployed, will be a game changer in the ecosystem. But like you have said, where I have a problem is the failure of the policy to recognize the cryptocurrency aspect of the blockchain ecosystem. Because one thing you and I know is that cryptocurrency remains one of the most visible aspects of transactions in the blockchain system. And I don't think that government's continued act of shying away or refusing to recognize or create a framework for crypto regulation, or to even understand it enough to be able to play in the space, is good for the ecosystem. Yes, a blockchain policy is important. At least Nigeria is beginning to come in tune with the with its readiness to actively play and build a solid digital economy that can compete globally. But you cannot do that by ignoring cryptocurrency transactions. So it's important that the policy, I'm happy that, for instance, the policy is going to now enable the relevant agencies of government to begin to look at a legal framework. Remember, a policy is an executive documentation, right? And as much may not have that much of a force of law, but definitely the legal framework will come from statutory bodies. And I think it's laying a solid foundation that may give rise to a system where cryptocurrency transactions would be recognized, you know, in whatever percentage. But just outlawing it, leaving it outlawed, ignoring it, and seeking to maybe provide alternatives, I think it's a dangerous step, so to speak. I know that there are challenges with the security implications of cryptocurrency transactions, but one thing that problems do is that problems keep us awake to look for solutions.
Yeah, exactly. Amari, sorry to bother you. You know, the minister, we just heard him now. He said, that regulatory agencies like the CBN, the NCC, so perhaps would we be seeing a different tune? Would the CBN especially be singing a different tune from what we currently know?
Yeah, so that's why, like I said, it's a policy. So the policy is just providing a foundation or a groundwork for the players to now, in a concerted manner, carry out whatever the objectives would be, to provide institutional mechanisms, legal framework to regulate the environment, to enable growth in the environment, and actually to give life to the digital economy. One thing that industry players and ecosystem leaders have to continue to call for is the recognition of the entire gamut of the blockchain field, right? Today we're talking about real estate tokenization. Government is even looking to rely on blockchain technology in their processes and in automating their processes. But also, we must look at the most popular, or the most commonly used aspect of the blockchain field, which is cryptocurrency, and ask ourselves some relevant questions. How do we, bring this within the ambit of government regulation? How do we even give government some measure of oversight? Because you see, the danger of, leaving it the way it is that ecosystem players, techpreneurs and those in that
Amari, when you say, the danger of leaving it, where it is, but some will be thinking, if perhaps there are some parts of the policy document, that is maybe giving you some concern, giving you some worry. Are there specifics that you have seen, that you've noted, that are giving you sleepless nights?
Well, I, as a lawyer, one of the things that I'm sure Timmy will share the same view with me is I'm really very, very particular about implementation of policies, right? When you talk about policies, laws, what must resonate is how do you implement these policies, right? And the policy document is very scanty on implementation. But even at that, we're hoping that it's going to be one that will actually factor in the desires of the private sector practitioners. The danger of our laws, and I use this word for want of better language, is oftentimes laws are made without adequate consultation. One of the benefits that the Startup Act brought to the table was the extensive consultations that went around before the enactment of the act, right? And today, what you have is a policy that has come to the fore, right? How robust was the consultation that brought to bear that policy?
Again,
we do not want...
Again, let me quote the minister. He said, about 50 institutions and, I think individuals, he said, were consulted before that policy was put together.
Yeah, but for a country of 200 million people and for techpreneurs that run into hundreds of thousands, remember Nigeria is Africa's the largest black market in the world, and even in the tech space, we are building a very solid resume as far as the global tech community is concerned and the exportation of tech talent, right? So I'm happy with the policy. Like I said, it's a game changer, right? And if anything else, what has happened is that if a groundwork has started, it's not cast in stone, which means that it's open to more revisions, it's open to consultations. It has actually said, look, agencies that have to do with different sectors of this ecosystem, get to work. Let's begin to look at the groundwork. Let's begin to look at what we need to do to provide an enabling environment for blockchain to thrive. Remember, you're looking at a $3 trillion market, so to speak. And Nigeria cannot afford not to have a bite of it. But like I said, implementation determines the efficacy of any law, right? If the implementation is hazy, if the implementation is not intentional, if there is a divide between the regulators and those being regulated, if there is no consensus added, there's no meeting of minds between the people who this policy, the laws that will flow from it, intend to regulate, what you are going to have would be half-baked intervention, so to speak, where even the policy players don't understand the system. Right before the Startup, and I keep going back to the Startup Act because this is intentional. Before the Startup Act, many startups, one of the challenges was that many startups didn't even understand the regulations that bind them, right? They didn't even know the regulators who will regulate what they do. There are no appropriate measures that provide an enabling environment, right? So we must learn from that to say whatever policies that we're bringing to the table, if really they are to create the right impact in the system, then it must be such that factors in the peculiarities of the players in the system. Because you cannot be you cannot comply, if there's a gap, a communication and understanding gap between those who the policy is supposed to regulate and those who are actually making the policies and implementing the laws.
Speaking about implementation, as perhaps the most important or the fulcrum that will run this, the government is coming to an end, and hopefully, perhaps the next government might take on the implementation, but we'll talk more on, the continuum of governance and government, when it comes to policies and documents like this. But let me hold you there for a bit. We'll take a quick break. And of course, when we come back, we'll take a look at another perspective, of this conversation. That's in a moment. Please stay with us.
Stay connected to the world with Channels TV Podcast and get all the trending stories. Simply log on to channelstv.com, click on podcast, select the program of your choice, and listen. Our podcast is available on Apple, Google, and Spotify. Tap the expertise you trust. Touch the stories that touch you. Anytime, anywhere. Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, and Roku. Channels Television, ubiquitous.
Many thanks for staying with us. We still have with us our guests joining us via Zoom, both of them from Lagos, Timi Olagunju, as well as Omori Ediogia-Were. Timi, let me just come to you to kick out this part of the conversation for us. Speaking of specifics now on the policy, in the policy document, is there anyone that, perhaps caught your attention, that has given you hope, so to speak, for the ecosystem?
Interestingly, like I mentioned earlier, in terms of hope, the good thing is that there is a certain pioneering direction towards ensuring that we recognize the importance of blockchain, right, in the ecosystem, in the day-to-day life of the Nigerian person and in Nigeria. That is a step in the right direction. However, when it comes to specifics, in terms of feedback from the particular document, you look at, for example, page 12 of the document, which speaks to the vision and the mission, the vision of that particular document. And you see that it doesn't robustly cover, it speaks mainly to capacity development, but does not cover the entire framework of adaptation, integration, across public and private sector players. And so there needs to be a rework of that vision in itself, because that is an important fulcrum for driving whatever legislative or legal framework will come out of the policy. And that's the first thing. When you look also at page 14 and 15 of the policy document, right? As much as it's kind of summarizes in a comprehensive sum covering various aspects, it doesn't, as much as it should, speaks to use cases that are prevalent in Nigeria. And that is one key thing we must look at. You know, charity begins at home. The document, the policy framework for blockchain should look at specific and important use cases that are peculiar to Nigeria.
Like which,
right?
like what and what or which?
Oh yes, for example, like what my learned friend talked about, you know, cryptocurrency. That's a key now. You know, that's a key use case. Another use case is in terms of healthcare, right? In terms of health, we have companies like RX Oil that are Nigerian companies that are pioneering blockchain in the health space, right? That's a key component in agriculture. There is a company called Binkobi that is pioneering blockchain in the agricultural sector. And so when the minister mentioned that they included stakeholders in the framing of the policy, I beg to differ. And my reason is this. In the list of the stakeholders that were listed in the policy, as much as it's commendable to have, you know, the Nigerian Universities Commission, but you and I know that blockchain is not peculiar to development in the university space. What of polytechnics, right? And you do not have the Ministry of Education as part of the stakeholder. That itself is not encompassing. Do you believe that when you look at the use cases of blockchain in Nigeria, you see that those use cases have the demographic of young people driving those use cases? You'd agree with me. Whether it's cryptocurrency, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's finance, considering even the demography of Nigeria, where you have more than 70% as young people, and you do not have a stakeholder as the Ministry of Youth as part of that conversation, that itself is an issue. You talk of use cases in agriculture, you don't have the Ministry of Agriculture as part of the stakeholders in that conversation. When you look at evidence is the end of argument, right? The minister should go and look at the document itself. It misses out the Ministry of Youth, misses out the Ministry of Agriculture, misses out the Ministry of Education, but includes the Nigerian University Commission, which only covers universities. What of polytechnics? What of technical colleges? What of how do you document, how do you ensure implementation of blockchain education even at secondary school levels? That's what they're doing at the level of Singapore. Yeah, right?
Timmy,
so those are key issues. Yes, please.
You know, again, like Omori said earlier on, this policy perhaps is not cast in stone, and you know, like the Nigerian Startup Act, which had a lot of consultations, you know, from wide and far. Perhaps this again might be open, you know, for further consultations to perhaps include all of these persons that you made mention of.
Victor, because you know, with the Startup Act, before it became like a policy document in terms of becoming law, right? There were consultations. We must stop the approach in government parastatals where consultations are always after certain things have been stamped and also signed by the presidency, right? The Startup Act, before it was signed, assented to by the president, there was already consultation extensively. I believe the Startup Act is one of the greatest works of legislation so far in the history of Nigeria because of its inclusiveness. But that was before the president signed. Now, this one has been signed by the president. Then you are now doing an after effect makeover. It doesn't work that way. If the foundation be destroyed, what can the makeup artists do than put powder? So instead of a powdered policy, a powdered implementation, let's start from the foundation to be inclusive from the very original before even the president assents to any policy or any law. That should be the driving force. And that is also the challenge that NIDA has, considering, for example, the current NIDA Amendment Act where a lot of stakeholders, including Computer Society of Nigeria, have come out to say that it is not inclusive and has not involved extensive consultation.
Document also,
and that is the issue.
but that document also is also not cast in stone. I understand they're still taking, reviews, and after there was a lot of, a backlash on social media, and around all quarters, so perhaps we might see that also with this policy on blockchain. But just as we wind down this conversation now, this government is winding down. The issue of continuum, what are the chances of this policy surviving, perhaps in the next administration? Quickly as we wind down.
Well, if I were, I would not want to take the stance of a prophet to predict what the administration, but going by history, right, when you look at the manifesto, I did an analysis of the manifesto of all the major 4 candidates. And I remember clearly that the president-elect, right, his manifesto speaks to crypto assets. And in that sense, although it did not speak on anything that relates to blockchain, but it speaks to crypto assets. So hopefully, we can see a possible, in the new administration, a possible reversal of the CBN stance, right, on crypto as it stands. And also, we can then see a robust inclusion of blockchain use in government parastatals. That is absent in the policy. How does the parastatals of government begin to look at possibilities of domiciling the use of blockchain in governance to ensure transparency and accountability in governance? Well, that should be the fulcrum of the next administration.
Let's hope that works. So, Omori, let me also get your stance, with regards to continuum, of government governance policies like this as well. Omori. Your mic is on mute.
So that's why I'm happy that the
Sorry,
policy...
come again. We couldn't hear you at first.
Yes, I said that's why I'm happy that the policy has, been put on NIDDA's table.
Yeah.
NIDDA is not a political entity, but a professional institution of government that remains irrespective of the government in power. We hope that the new administration will work with NIDDA to review these policies. Right. I share some of Timmy's sentiments that NIDDA may be having a lot on its plate, and that may impact on its productivity. Yeah. But at least the fact is, this is not on the table of a political appointee who would leave office, and when a new administration comes in, they're having to start from the scratch to even understand what it is.
Very well.
The agency of government is in place to...
hopefully. So we'll come back again, hopefully, perhaps in the next 2-3 months to see, how that implementation will go. But I have to say thank you to you, Amari, for joining us as well, as well as Timmy for joining us as well. Thanks, guys. But that's where we are. Thank you so much for being a part of the program today. Of course, also our hope is that the policy would go forward and, shape the tech space for us and make it to blossom so that all Nigerian youths who are playing in that sector would have the benefit that they require. But that's where we'll wrap it up on the show. Thank you so very much for watching. I'm Victor Matthias, who would leave you with the most viewed videos on our YouTube channel in the past week.
This week's top 5 videos begin from the law courts, where the President-elect Bola Tinubu and his party, the APC, are asking the Elections Petitions Tribunal to dismiss petitions by the APM and the PDP. It is followed by the coronation of King Charles III in Great Britain after ascending the throne following the death of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II.
Vice President, tell our brother...
Third Spot sees the video of Ohaneze Ndigbo asking President Muhammadu Buhari to release Nnamdi Kanu.
Request that he should release Nnamdi Kanu. He should release Nnamdi Kanu. Igbos are not seceding.
In second spot is APC senators-elect making their dissatisfaction known over zoning of positions for the 10th Assembly.
certain individuals.
While in first is factional secretary of the Labour Party maintaining that the agitation of their presidential candidate, Mr. Peter Obi, is not supported by law.